Hey guys, welcome back once again to STVCastle Chess. This is Stephen Vitt, commentating on this game that I played not too long ago, which was a few days ago, and this is going to feature the English opening, um, and this is particularly a game where I play once again as black, and I have to defend against the English opening. My opponent, by the username of CRF250R, he plays the English opening, and I have to respond. And normally, let's get into the game right away. Let's not waste any time. Normally, when your opponent plays C4, the English opening, the most typical response that you can give as black would be E5. Now, that's not the only move you can play, but that is the most typical move that you can play. And it's basically the safest play that you can make in response to C4. Now, continuing on, move 2, my opponent plays knight C3, and sometimes I see myself playing that move as well after I play C4 if I'm white. So as black here in this game, I play D6. I play it conservatively, knowing that the knight is covering this square here on D5. So I can't just go too aggressive and move up here because it's covered by a pawn and a knight. That's just typical. Next move is E3, knight F6, D4. Now my opponent moves up, trying to take ownership of the central squares here. Again, it's a typical move that you make if you're pushing the pawns forward, especially to the center of the board. D4. I play bishop E7. I have to get the bishop out of the way to be able to castle my king. D5. I was expecting that. I was expecting my opponent to just take this D5 square. He was eyeing it a few moves ago anyway with the knight and the pawn. I get my other bishop out, bishop F5. My next move there, move number 5. F3. Now, I'm assuming that with that move, he was wanting to bridge these pawns together. Castle. I go ahead and castle. Don't waste any time. E4. That's exactly what he does. He's bridging the pawns together. I get that. So I got to move my bishop back to G6. G4. Now, he is leaving himself open to getting this pawn chain taken down. Now, sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth it to play aggressive like this, as long as you know what you're doing. But other times, when you play too aggressively, when you keep moving your pawns out like this, it can lead to trouble. Just so you guys know. H6, H4, and again, this is what he's doing. He's trying to create some sort of pawn storm here. I move my knight back to E8, knowing that with these pawns and the bishop, he's trying to push my knight back. I could already see that from a mile away. And he's also trying to get these pawns uh, broken down. H5, so he goes after my bishop instead. Move my bishop back to H7. I have to maintain my position, even though he's coming at me with all these pawns. Bishop G2. He just moves his bishop over here to this corner square. C6. I got to create some sort of separation so I can get this knight going. Knight from G to E2. He gets his king's knight out. I go ahead and take the pawn. C takes D5. C takes D5. Still doesn't want my knight to get this square. Go ahead, move my pawn out here because I didn't want this knight to come out here. That's why I played that move. Bishop E3. Okay, so far he is doing what he's supposed to be doing which is developing his pieces. Once he got the pawn chain out of the way, he started developing his pieces. And I can see that. So d5, go ahead, charge forward with these two pawns here. Queen to d2, excuse me. Knight to d7. I finally have to make that decision. I can't move here, so I have to move the knight down here, d7. That's fine. Bishop takes, pawn to h6. Now, this is something that I notice a lot in my games where it's like no matter what I do, uh, when I get in a position like this, no matter what I do, my opponent is always gunning for this pawn structure, even if it turns out that he has to sacrifice a bishop. That's his plan, at least. So bishop takes pawn h6. I simply can't take back the bishop with the pawn because that's going to obliterate my pawn structure right then and there. He's going to come back with the queen. It's going to be all sorts of disaster here. So I go ahead, knight c5, move my knight forward. He goes ahead and takes the other pawn. Bishop takes the g pawn, g7. Finally, I have to take that bishop with my king. King takes g7. And that is a point I want to make before I continue here, is that don't always assume, here's a tip of mine, don't always assume that once your opponent takes a pawn and towards the corner here, don't always assume that it's always the correct move to make to just take back the bishop immediately. Sometimes it's not, from what I've noticed in my games, guys. That's just a helpful tip that I can give you. But anyway, back to the game. King takes bishop g7. That was my response. h6 check, clearly connecting the rook and the pawn there. King moves back to h8, and this is why I title this "When Things Break Down." When things break down, you can't panic. You can't just react to whatever your opponent is playing against you. You can't just do that. So you have to maintain your position. You have to stay strong in your own corner of the board here. King h8. Knight to g3. Rook to g8. Knight to f5. Now he's clearly wanting to do some damage either here or here. Or he assumes I'm just going to take my bishop over there. Bishop to g5. I made that decision in thinking that he was going to go after my dark square bishop, so I did not allow him to do that. I instead saw a weakness here where the queen had to get out of the way if I did this, because my bishop is covered by both my queen and my rook. So the queen has to move out of the way, which he does. Queen a2. b4. I decided to drive the knight back. I wanted to see where the knight was going to go. Knight to d1. Queen a5. This is where I start putting on some pressure here, hoping to get some sort of a discovered attack with a discovered check here. King f2. He already saw that. I mean, good for him. He saw that. So I move my queen back to queen b6. I still want to have that discovered check. King g3. He still doesn't want that. I'm assuming that in his case, from his perspective, that my opponent figured that things were just going to break down easily for him. So that's why he had to make these repeated moves with the king. But then again, I really believe that from what I was seeing, I really believe that he was going to be okay, that he was going to find a way to protect his king, but that wasn't the case here. Bishop to f4 check. Knowing that the bishop is protected by the pawn here, I can go ahead and do this. Have to move the king out of this position here. King h3. Now he's driven his own king over here. And even I'm wondering, why is he doing that? So I go ahead and take the knight with my bishop. Bishop takes knight f5. Go ahead and finally do that. E-pawn takes bishop f5. He still has a pawn structure here that can be broken down, as you will see in a few moves from now. Knight f6. I start going after this. Bishop f1. Rook g5. I notice the weakness here, guys. The pawn structure. I hope you guys can see that. These three pawns right here. King g2, a5, queen f2. Now I get my other rook in the game. Rook a to g8, connecting the rooks together. And once again, going after this pawn structure. You notice that he's just not addressing this with this pawn structure. He only has one defender on this pawn, and that's this pawn right here. He has to address this, and he's not doing a good enough job of that. He finally does it here with queen to h4, but is it too little too late? Let's see. I move my pawn forward e4, going after this pawn, this lone defender. That is the core of this defense for white. Does he have an answer? h7, attacking my rook. But here's the problem with that. I can easily move my rook out of the way. And what can he do? His response is queen to h6, but yeah, it doesn't really do anything. Yes, he's attacking the knight with the queen, but e-pawn takes f-pawn on f3 check, and he has to do something. King takes pawn f3. He has to do it. So now that I know that his defense has been broken down, the lone pawn defender is gone after I make that move. Knight c to e4. I connect my knights so that the queen can't take it. I do that. But I also, this is a double-sided thing here. I'm also freeing up my queen over here. My queen has just been sitting here on b6 for a little while, not doing much of anything. And sometimes I like to do that. I like to just hide the queen for a little bit and not bring it out so early. Because when you bring your queen out too early, you're going to wind up in trouble. You've got to be patient with your attacks. So it's best to hide your queen for at least a little bit of time before you start attacking with it. That's another tip of mine. So that was the purpose of that. Knight c to e4. His response, bishop to d3. He's attacking the knight, but I go ahead and move my knight again. Knight d2, that same knight. Knight to d2 check. King has to move again. And so yes, I lose my bishop as a result of that, but sometimes you have to be crazy like a fox, so to speak, in order to get what you want. The king's out in the middle of nowhere right now. So of course, yay, he took a bishop, but he's still in trouble. Because here's the queen. Queen d4 check. Where can he go? One more move for my opponent to make. And this was the last official move that he made in this game. King to g3. And what's next? Because guess what? There's no defender here. Rook takes pawn. Rook takes pawn g4 check. Now, that was not checkmate, mind you, but that was awfully close to it. Because look, the rooks are still connected. The knight is defending that rook. Queen is defending the rook. Knight's right here waiting to attack if he has to. There's nowhere for this king to go. And case in point, let's just say if this game continued for another move or two, what would my opponent have done? There's really only two spots for my king to go to. And you really just have to pay attention to what's going on here. Let's say he moves here. Let's say he moves to h3, king h3. What would I have done in this situation? Well, rook to g3 check. King would have to move again. King h2. And what's the final move? It's not the queen. It's the knight. Knight to f3 checkmate. I think my opponent realized that he did not have anywhere to go after this. This was the last official move, move 36. Rook takes pawn g4 check. So this is no good. Now let's see if he moves up here. Well, he has another kind of trouble here because I can move my rook here. Rook to h4 check. And if he wants to keep the game going, he has to sacrifice his queen. Queen takes rook h4. But guess what? Now I move my queen. Queen takes queen, h4 checkmate. So really, either way, he was bound. Really, either way, he was bound to just be checkmated. And it's just really interesting how this game broke down. When things break down, guys, it's very important to stay focused on what your objective is. When you know that your king is ahead of you, when you know that your opponent's king is like right in front of you, and he's out in the middle of nowhere, and he's moving his king so much, and he's getting his other pieces in trouble like this, like what you're seeing right now. And you can exploit something like that broken down pawn chain I was putting emphasis on throughout this video. When you can do that, when you can get your opponent's king into danger like that, more often than not, you're going to end up winning games. So, yeah, I just wanted to show this game to you guys to just illustrate how when things break down, you have to really focus. You have to really analyze the position, not just your own position, but your opponent's position as well. If your opponent is in a position where you know that his king is moving all over the place and he's not moving his other pieces enough, that's where you have to realize on your own accord that you have to make moves. You have to keep all your pieces going. You have to keep all of your pieces active equally, which is not always easy to do, but you have to do it. So, yeah, this is the English opening, King's English variation. Hope you guys got something out of it. And I'm always improving my commentary on chess games. This is just the 10th episode of STVCastle Chess, so there's going to be more on the way. Um, STVCastle Chess as a series, it's a learning process for me to basically break down what I'm seeing on the board when I'm reviewing these games. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. Please give this video a thumbs up. Um, Share this with friends. Share this with people in particular who love to play the game of chess. And I'll be coming back with more chess content soon. Thank you guys so much and have a good day. Bye.